And we are back with another Between the Pages book chat. And today our guest is David Green, and we will be talking about his epic fantasy book in Solitude Shadow, which is book one of Empire of Ruin series. And I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. I'm David Green. I am from Galway in Ireland, but I grew up in Manchester in the UK, which is why I do not sound Irish to Irish people, but other people sometimes think that I do, which Irish people do not agree with whatsoever. I've been living in Galway for 12 years again now, and I started writing just before the pandemic started, which was great timing for me because on the good side, I had plenty of time to write. But on the negative side, I couldn't go and take my books anywhere to try and sell them other than online. So it was, but it was an interesting time to decide to change my career.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, it didn't bother me because I was online mostly anyway. So, because here in Nova Scotia, the out of the house opportunities are not so great. So,
right, sure. I'd always like to go to Nova Scotia. I know someone who lives. I know them from online. I do a lot of kind of videos with them in the Wheel of Time fandom, and they live in Nova Scotia. But we've been in the same clubs as each other in the UK at different times, which is really weird because like he lives in Nova Scotia, and so it's like I wonder if we're in the same time. But he's also bald with a red beard as well, so some people think we're just the same person anyway.
interesting. So before we get off topic even further, tell us about your book.
Empire of Ruin. I have it here actually. I have a handy one. I have the hardback version right
Yeah,
here.
that is a gorgeous cover.
Thanks very much. The cover is done by I can never remember the name. It's Rainbow Danger Designs. It's Zoe Peretta. And this one is a special one. I got it the first book convention I went to. I got it signed by all the other authors that I was on panels with and everything like that. So I have it as a little kind of keepsake. But it's the first book in the series, Empire of Ruin, and it is dark epic fantasy. Another author who reviewed it when it first came out, AM Justice, said it was like grimdark with hope, which is what I was going for actually, because I didn't want it to be like Joe Abercrombie or Mark Lawrence. I wanted it to be a little bit lighter than that, so that's what I was aiming for. So I'm glad that someone was like, "This is what it's like." I was like, "I've done part of the job well. That's good to know." So this is the first book. It's a series of 4. And it's each book is progressively getting darker and bigger. So the first book is the start of the series, obviously, and it's the introduction to the main cast of characters. So it's a multi-POV, third person, and at the kind of there's big epic stakes to it, but it's also very, very character driven. So at the heart of it is the relationship between an estranged mother and daughter that are both adults. The daughter character is in her early 30s and the mother is in her mid 50s. And they're estranged because of a choice that the mother makes at some point in the past to what she thinks is the right choice for her family and for her daughter. And it causes this estrangement, and there's lots of various characters that are on either side that are friends with these people that are kind of on either side of it, and it kind of is dealt with a little bit, and there is a big kind of quest at it as well, kind of like an impossible quest, I suppose, and it all comes to a head at the end of the book before the kind of the main stakes for the whole series is set up, which is going on to the next few books.
Cool. Okay. And SD Houston here likes your blurb as well as the cover. So
thanks. Blurbs are so difficult as well. Like the amount of blurbs we did for that book, I can't. Oh, so many.
Yeah. Blurbs are very difficult.
Yeah.
I use Brian Cohen's formula that he mentioned in his 5-day Amazon challenge thing he does. So that's what I use now for getting blurbs done. It works pretty good. So
Yes, I'll have to bear that in mind for the future, because just so many. I write more versions of blurbs than I do anything else, I think, for the books.
oh yeah, you have to. You have to write the initial blurb, and then you have to tweak it, and then you have to
Yes.
tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, okay, so Shannon says, yes, they are, but I love how you know about the mother and daughter and how the relationship is part of the plot. So that's what you liked about the blurb. So
Excellent, that's good. It's a big part of it. Yeah, it's a big part of the plot, and it was something that I was very keen to get out there. There is part of that, because I love fantasy, and I've been reading fantasy for most of my life, and most books that you do read are all about daddy issues. People, male characters that have daddy issues, and I wanted to kind of explore that from a different way and look at it in that. And it was something that I worked a lot on. Obviously, I could do daddy issues very, very well, and there is there is a dynamic between a son and a father as well in it, which I found very, very straightforward to write. The one between the mother and daughter, it was something that I really kind of drilled into with my beta readers, and just to kind of make sure that the emotion was right and it was realistic in this fantastical setting with magic and everything else that's going on, because I wanted to do it properly, and it's important for the rest of the series as well.
well, Shannon agrees with that. So
Yes.
okay, so so tell us about the characters. What are they like?
So there's in the first book, I want to say there's three main characters, but there is other POVs as well, where we kind of look at the antagonist point of view in a way. And with this book, there's a lot of shades of grey. Even the heroic characters. So the lady that's on the front of the cover is Colleen Alpenwood. She is a mage that's part of this order called Order of Sparkers, which is controlled by the Empire that she fights for. And they have like a doctrine which says that they can only use their magic in certain ways, and the Empire is kind of putting them into positions where they can use them as weapons. And some of them are going along with it, and they actually want that to happen, and some of them are kind of more resistant to it. But they're all kind of complicit in this genocide that's going on in this empire, this continent that they're in, and this constant war that they have going on with people that live there, that the empire is trying to wipe out. Now, the empire and the people in charge feel they're justified for it, and we find out what those reasons are as well. But Colleen is very much a part of that, but she's one of the more she does have a moral compass, which gets tested, especially when she is faced with recontacting her mother again, who, when she made this decision, she's called Zana Alpenwood, and she's one of the other POV characters. When she has made this decision, that she gets exiled. It's either death or exile, basically, for the thing that she has done. And she's exiled, so we kind of spend time with her as well, and the mother and daughter, Colleen and Zana, have to reconnect, and that kind of brings up a lot of issues between them, and reasons of what is wrong and what is right, and what is it they're doing. What is it? Is the Order of Sparkers correct? All right. And then the other main POV we have is a ordinary man called Cade Besson, who is of the main capital's kind of nobility, but he has a questionable past, where he's put his family into disgrace, and he's got a small role on Hautveld, which is the Empire, on their kind of council, but it's because of his family's power, and he's been given this very, very small role as an insult, basically. And he is, for various reasons that we find out for, he has sent his son to train as a Sparker where this Rosanna Alpenwood is exiled. So that's how they all kind of link in together. So we explore the kind of magical side of it, the emotional side of it, and we also get the political intrigue as well, which there is quite a lot of, because it's not a particularly nice place to live in.
Yeah, well, I do like good political intrigue. So, anyway, so what was the hardest scene that you had to write in the book or series?
Hardest scene. Well, yeah, I've written two of them so far. I've just finished the sequel, which is called Path of War, which is quite a bit bigger and quite more complex. There's a few more POVs in that one as well. And whereas in the first book, they're all the characters are kind of moving into the same location for the ending of the book, which is a place called Solitude. Hence the title. One of the reasons why it's called In Solitude Shadow. In Path of War, they're all on kind of different paths, and it's a lot more complex to kind of make sure that the themes are kind of reflecting each other. But the most difficult scene that I had to write, there's probably two that stands out. In the first book, there is a scene where Zana Alpenwood has to make a decision towards the going into the final third of the third act of the book, and it was just trying to get that emotion right again, because it concerns not only her daughter but like her apprentice that's there and her role in what she has done in the past and what is right and what is wrong, and she is kind of wrestling with this. And I wanted to do it in a kind of way where you're telling it instead of showing it instead of telling it, but I wanted to make sure the emotion was right as well, and that was something that I worked on like a lot, like really really drilled into, and I probably went over that section more than any other section in both books so far. And then in the second scene, the second book, we spend quite a lot of time with one of who you'd think is one of the antagonists, and it's like kind of a descent into madness that this character is going on because of the various things that are going on in Houtville, and to kind of get that balance where this person is doing very, very despicable things and almost depraved things, but to kind of make it that he has some semblance of someone can see, yeah, I can see where he's coming from here. I don't agree with his actions, but I understand why he is acting this way. Because the books as well, like there's no swearing in the books, and there's in-world swearing and cursing, and there's no like sex, but it's not like a clean book. There is violence, it is dark fantasy, but it's not like violence for violence sake, and it's not explicit for explicit sake either. It has to kind of mean something. So there's a scene where he tortures someone for information, and it was that kind of just to kind of get that balance right, where it's just the tone is correct and it's just not going too far in some places, just to make it seem like it's gratuitous.
Yeah, I have to do the same thing sometimes when I'm writing horror. So
right, yeah, that helps.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite scene that you wrote in the book or series?
Favorite scene, the ending for the first book is it works exactly how I wanted it to work, which was good, because this was my first epic fantasy book. This one I'd written like short stories before, and I have an urban fantasy series as well, which I'd only written the first book of that one by the time I did this one, and I knew what the ending was going to be. Like I'm not quite a complete plotter, but I'm not a pantser either. I'm a planter. I'm in the middle somewhere, right? So I knew what the ending was going to be, but every time I was getting closer and closer to it, I was thinking, have I got enough skill to actually pull this off yet? I don't know if I have or not, right? And because it's three different strands and three different characters all kind of diverging together in this big kind of epic moment. But it worked pretty well. It worked out pretty well, and people seem to have responded to it really, really really well, and in reviews, most people in reviews mention it, and there's certain things that happen in the scene as well that I wanted people to have a reaction to, and people seem to have that reaction that I was looking for it as well, which is good. So that's great. And in the second book, there's a bit where Colleen goes off she's with other characters at the start of the second book, and she goes off on a kind of her own adventure for a little while, which is it's the thing seems like it's unrelated to the rest of the plot, but then it turns out that it is quite related, but it's like her own little kind of sword and sorcery adventure, and I had a lot of fun writing that bit. It wasn't in my outline either. My outline was basically just a line saying Colleen has an adventure. And it was like, I'll just do something for a chapter, and it ended up being 20,000 word section of this book where she just had this big rambling thing, and it was great fun to write.
Yes, proving that plotters do not have to stick to their outlines, which is something I've been saying all along.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It needed it as well. The book needed it, so it was, it very much needed this thing. And if it was just like a chapter or something, it wouldn't be anywhere as satisfying. It was, it was like, it was great fun. I do not regret it.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience. Shannon asks, do you always know the ending of your series?
With this one, with the Empire of Ruin, I do. I know the ending of it, and I know various things that have to happen along the way. So the way I kind of have described it before is like, if I imagine like a garden, and I'm stood at the back door of my house, and I can see the gate leading outside from the garden, but the path kind of winds around like a slide or a pond, and there's a tree that I know that I have to walk past, but then the path can just kind of meander a little bit and come back this way and then go back that way, but eventually it'll get to where I need to go, past these various things that I know I need to walk past. So that's the kind of way that I look at it. But like the absolute ending of the book, and I'd say 90% of the characters, I know what their endings are going to be. In this series, in the other one that I have, the urban fantasy one that's called Hell in Haven, I did have what I thought was going to be, and I was like, this is going to be 5 books, and this is this and this. But my publisher was like, these are really good, and we like them. Can you do more? So I was like, I guess I can do more. So my plans for that one have kind of changed a little bit. There is still, again, certain things that I know that has to happen to the main character. It's written differently. This one is just a first-person point of view, so we kind of stick with him. So I know things that are going to happen to him on his kind of journey. I know the resolution for the kind of overarching plot, but because of the guy is like a paranormal detective, there's other kind of like side books that I can do where it's just kind of like, standalone kind of stories that are set within this universe with this character, and then we can ignore the main plot for a book or so and then get back to it.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned the urban fantasy, which is a book I bought, by the way. And what struck me about that is that it seemed a lot like a cross between The Spectre and the Dresden Files. Would that be accurate?
What was the first one that you said, sorry?
The Spectre? It's a comic book.
The Spectre. Okay, no, I've never read that, so no, it wouldn't be. But I Dresden Files was one. It's funny, really. But when I wrote, so the Nick Halloran books, that Hell in Haven. So the first one was called Dead Man Walking, and it was kind of a novelette at first, and it was it wasn't a very, very big story, but it was my first kind of one tackling something a little bit longer, and I wasn't expecting it to get published or anything. But I had never read the Dresden Files at that point. I heard of the Dresden Files, and I knew kind of things about it, but I knew that he was a magician. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to put the main character to be a magician in this or anything like that. He's not going to have any powers. He's going to just be a regular person, other than the setup for the book and the world. So I finished Dead Man Walking, and as a treat to myself, I was like, I'll read the first Dresden book. And I read the first Dresden book, and I was like, this is quite similar to what I have written. And so I read the next 2 Dresden books, and when I was kind of like, I already had the idea for the rest of the series, and the next book, The Devil Walks in Blood, we moved to a different publisher, and they were like, well, why are you doing this second one? Why don't we expand the first one and put them into the same book together as like a special edition? And I was like, yeah, that's great, because I can go back and kind of rewrite the novelette and expand it and what have you. So I went and read the next 2 Dresden books, and I was like, I'm okay. I think we're both going in different directions a little bit. But then a lot of people say that they're like, you must like Supernatural and you must like this, and I'm like, I was saying to you before we started, I've only just started watching Supernatural as well, because so many people are like, this is like Supernatural, you must love Supernatural. I was like, never. I've seen the memes and the gifs, that's it. I've not seen anything else. So I went back and watched it. I'm up to season 6 at the minute. I really enjoy it, and I can see some similarities there as well. But I think with the premise of like urban fantasy, and with my Holleran books being the way they are, where it's not a spoiler to say that the main character gets killed in the first line of the book, right?
Yeah.
And,
which is why I got the Spectre connection, because the similar thing happens to that character. He's a policeman killed on the duty. He comes back as a ghosty character. So
right, fair enough. So yeah, I can see that. So like he gets killed in the first line of the book, doesn't quite die completely. He comes back to life, but then he sees that like heaven is real because he was about to go up there. But then when he realizes that, and he was released from hospital from his surgery, he realizes that hell is also real, and that we are living in hell. And there's like ghosts and demons and all this kind of stuff populated around that he can see now. And he wants to kind of, figure out why things are the way that they are, but also at the same time keep his nose clean so he can get back into heaven when it's time for him to pop his clogs again, which is a lot trickier than it sounds. So so that's where I can see why people would say it's a bit like Supernatural, it's a bit like Hellblazer. But one of the big influences when I was writing it was John Wick, actually. So, which no one really ever picks up on. And I was like, because I was kind of like, I'd like to do, because there's after the prologue when he's shot, there's like a 5-year time jump for a couple of reasons. One of them was because I was like, well, I could do some spin-offs and I could do some like prequels and what have you. But I also wanted to have this like lived-in feel where people were like knew who he was and he knew these other people, because it's first person, and I didn't want him to just be explaining stuff all the time. So I wanted it to be like conversations with characters and go into places that he was familiar with and world build that way. Like John Wick does, the first John Wick, when he's like, he comes back out of retirement and people are like, oh, hey, John, how's things? And like, there's this relationship. So that was one of the big influences, but no one picks up on it. So there you go.
Well, I'll have to look for it because I've seen John Wick. So when I start reading the books, I will look for the John Wick similarities.
Right.
So, so you write fantasy, urban fantasy, epic fantasy. Are there any other genres that you want to try in the future?
I have a crime novel, just a straightforward crime novel that's going to be coming out end of this year or beginning of next, and it was actually the first thing that I ever wrote, and it was the thing that got me into writing. I was writing a chapter a week at a creative writing class for adults after my son was born, and I was like, because I look after my son full time, and I was like, I need to get out of the house once a week on my own just to do something, talk to other adults, otherwise I'm going to lose my mind. So I was like, I'll join a creative writing class. And then we were given this prompt about, what was it now? The prompt was write a story about a smile. And it was like a short story. So I wrote, I love unsolved crimes. I love unsolved like mysteries that like no one knows to this day, like why this is the way that it is. Or so I was always really interested. I don't know if you know about the Somerton Man. It was like a guy that we found on this beach in Brisbane in Australia in the, I think it's the 40s or 50s. I think it was the 50s, and he was just in the suit. Like all the labels cut off, and no one knew who he was. And then a day later or so, when they were searching the area, they found a car that had a briefcase in it, and it was his briefcase. And in it, there was the Tibetan Book of the Dead was in there with a page torn out, and the bit that says Tam and Shud, and that was posted somewhere else. And to this day, no one knows what was really going on with it. So I was I don't know how I linked the two together, the writing prompt to this, and I wrote the first chapter of like, if I was going to solve this Tam and Shud case, what was it about? And this was basically the thing, and it developed into a full novel, and it's set in Santa Monica in America, and it's set in the 1940s. And when I finished it, I was like, well, what do I do now? I finished it in like March 2020, and I was like, well, what do I do? I have no idea what to do with this thing. So I started going, well, I read fantasy, so I'll start looking at fantasy. I did a bit of horror and everything as well, in short stories and what have you. And I just had this book just lying around. No one had seen it, and I ended up showing it to someone who was I didn't know had a publishing house, and they were like, "This is really good. Like, can we publish it?" And I was like, "Sure." But they went under, unfortunately. But by the time they went under and the book went back to me, I'd been working with another independent publisher called Erie River, who do my Halloran books and In Solitude Shadow, and they were like, "We'll release it." So I was like, great. So that's coming out. So that's coming out at some point, and it's really weird because I don't read that kind of book. I never have, other than Agatha Christie novels and stuff, which I do love, and I would love to do a proper Agatha Christie style mystery. I'd love to do that, and that's one of the things to answer the question that I'd love to do. But yeah, I don't read any of that kind of books, like that kind of like. But I love noir movies. I love stuff like Mosey's Falcon and LA Confidential and Casablanca, The Third Man, all that kind of stuff. From like, and I studied film at university, and that was something that I did kind of my dissertations on was film noir, and so this book is kind of like my kind of like homage to all that kind of stuff that I really like. So yeah, I guess other than that, I would love to do kind of a Agatha Christie style mystery. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I tried that once. All my mysteries turned into fantasy stories. So I love reading them. Not so good at writing them, but
that's cool. An Agatha Christie fantasy novel would be pretty good.
yeah, well, I'm currently working on a steampunk paranormal mystery series,
right.
Short stories. But so I'm indulging my love of mysteries a little bit.
Excellent.
Anyway, okay, I think we'll wrap the interview up here, and I'll let you tell everyone where they can find you and your books.
Sure, thanks very much. So the best place to find me is my website. It's www.davidgreenwriter.com, and that has like my books, and it has all my kind of social media and everything like that you can click on and say hello, and I'll always say hello back.
Okay, great. And I've linked his book down below in the description, as well as his Amazon page, so you can check out his books if you want to. And that's it for now. And we will be back next weekend with another guest. So bye-bye.